Hello everyone, this is Kurt Gardella. I'm coming to you live from Blönduós, Iceland, and I have Hamish John Appleby on the line through Skype, and we're going to be talking about his latest Camino Norte walk. Hamish, why don't we start with a quick introduction to you?
Sure, thanks, Kurt. I guess I can begin by saying I'm Australian, and I'm based in Germany. I'm a photographer. And the Camino Norte was my third Camino, and I completed that last year in 2018.
My first question, Hamish, what distinguishes this Camino from other Caminos that you've walked? I know you've done some other ones.
Yeah, good question. I guess the Camino Frances being the most famous and most popular walk is very, very sort of, I mean, it's impossible to get lost, really. It's very well sign marked, and I don't want to say it's a super easy walk, but it's a relatively easy walk. But it's also sort of it's the foundation sort of Camino of Caminos. And I think I did read somewhere that someone once described the Camino Frances as it's the walk that you do to learn how to do a Camino. And so often people, when deciding on whether to walk the Camino Frances or the Camino Norte as their first Camino, end up choosing the Camino Frances for that reason, and are very thankful for that, so that when they do a walk like Camino Norte, they have a better sense on what a Camino is about, and that's exactly what happened to me. I walked the Camino Frances in 2017, followed by the Camino Portuguese, and the Camino Norte is it is well sign marked, but it is a very different walk. It's a harder walk. There's more sort of up and down. There's slightly less choice in terms of places to stay. Options for sort of stopping. I mean, having said that, it's still very well. It's a very well supplied, lack of a better word. It's a Camino that caters for pilgrims. But it's different in the sense that it's a tougher walk. It's a probably a more lonely walk. It felt to me like on the Camino Frances I have probably met about people who represented 150 different countries from all over the world, whereas the Camino Norte is often dubbed the Germino because it's sort of 90% Germans who walk that Camino. So you tend to see the same people sort of over and over again because there are less people. To sum it up, it's a longer walk for a start. It's a harder walk. It's a harder walk, and it's a tougher walk, and it's a harder walk mentally because it's a little more. It gives you more sort of time on your own, so to speak, and there are less people. It's less populated, so in those ways it's different. But it's a more beautiful walk without a doubt. It's some of the coastline there is the most beautiful coastline I've ever experienced, and I had the fortuitous opportunity to be able to swim on many occasions, which is a real rarity and a treat on a Camino. When I could, I'd sort of jump into the sea, and that, you can't do that on the Camino Frances because it's an inland walk.
You mentioned the word pilgrim, and I'm always wondering with these Camino walks, do you have to be a religious person to do these walks? Talk about that.
Yeah, that's a question that I get asked quite a lot, and of course the original idea of a Camino in the Middle Ages was a religious pilgrimage because Santiago, Compostela, the location is supposed to hold the. I mean, I'm not religious in that sense, so my lack of religious details is a bit sketchy. But Santiago Compostela is supposed to hold the I think it's the body or the something or other of St. James. I think he's supposed to be buried there. Terrible that I don't know, but in any case, I think by saying that I've already answered your question. Do you have to be religious? No, you don't. And in fact, I think one of the beauties of the Camino is that look, I did meet some quite religious people, and I also met a lot of non-religious people, and I met people who were something in between. I met Christians, Jews, Muslims, atheists, spiritual people, esoterical people. Everybody's there. Black, white, grey. Gay, straight, in between. It's a walk for everybody, and I think that's one of the attractive things about it. So definitely anyone who's considering walking the Camino and who might be somehow apprehensive or put off by the idea of thinking that they're going to be approached by religious people who are going to try and convert them to something. It's not going to happen. In the end, it's just a great big walk.
You just talked about people from all walks of life who do this walk. Just single out a couple of the people that you met along this walk. What sort of friendship did you form with them? I'm assuming you picked up some friendships along this walk. Just talk about some of those people.
Yeah, absolutely. I started the Camino Norte. Actually, let me take you back a step. So on the Camino Frances in 2017, I actually started that walk alone, and along the way became very good friends with a few people who ended up being great friends today. The Camino Norte is a walk that I actually started with a friend of mine from Australia, a very good friend called Alan, who is repeatedly seen through the slides. And Alan's a very, very good friend of mine who I've known since the art school days. And he and I had just no end of laughter and fun. The Camino is a funny thing because people do say that you should preferably do alone, because people do have different walking speeds and like ideas of what a Camino is and different styles of sort of operating. I guess I've actually lived in a share house many years ago. I'd lived in a share house many years ago with Alan, and so I knew that being on a Camino with him was going to pose no sort of issues with sort of walking at different speeds or whatever. And so we had an amazing time. But in terms of people who I met on the Camino Norte, I did meet another person, Alex, who was also Alex from Mexico, and that was great. Alex, being Mexican, spoke fluent Spanish, and me being just incredibly, I don't know what the word is, sort of lazy and ignorant with second languages, was unable to pronounce just anything in Spanish. And so even when I tried, it was like cafe con leche and sumo naranja. And so Alex was constantly laughing at how sort of pathetic my attempt at Spanish was. And she and I got along really well. And I would say we made a good friend from out of that with Alex too. So yeah, I think that, I've through Facebook and Instagram and other social media, I can see that people who have met each other on the Camino stay friends, and that's another really beautiful thing too. You do meet people. They say that on the Camino, you'll meet who you're supposed to meet, for whatever reason, and I would say I back that statement. It's definitely rings very true for me.
Hamish, I know you're planning for another walk soon, and I want to go back a little bit. How do you prep for your walks in general? How did you prep for this walk?
My earlier walks were the preparation was doing smaller walks. So as I'm based in Erfurt in Thüringen in Germany, and in this part of Germany there's some beautiful forests, and so I'd often sort of take myself off on day walks or overnight walks through hiking tracks, And I sort of built that up. There's a quite a famous walk here called the Rennsteig, and I did sort of 3/4 of that with another friend. So I think it's sort of it's all about doing small walks, day walks, overnight walks, getting yourself and your body used to walking just in general. Also making sure that you test everything. So I walk with trekking sticks with suspension, and that was definitely an eye opener for me because prior to having lived in Germany, I would never have dreamt of using sticks. For me, they were always kind of like sort of ugly, nerdy, sort of weird things that, only sort of, I don't know. I just would never have used them. And having now tried them, used them, I say with 100% passion, they are the best investment I ever made with walking gear. It's scientifically proven that they transfer the stress, 30% of the stress off your ankles and your knees, and they transfer the weight to your upper body. So basically your upper body gets a better workout, and it's easier on the knees and the ankles. So I love walking with sticks, and having done the prep work and sort of getting to understand how to walk with sticks and prepping with sticks, having the right shoes, and getting tips along the way, put me in a very good position to sort of embark on those first two Caminos, and then having learnt from them about some of the do's and don'ts. Camino Norte was I don't say it was easy for me, but I was certainly very well prepared. Weight is always an issue. I even when I've packed very well, I've still always overpacked a little bit. And I think we got into sort of week one, and both Alan and I ended up spending a couple of hours at the post office sending back a couple of kilos each, him back to Australia and me back to Germany. So, they say that you shouldn't carry more than 10% of your body weight, but it's not really realistic. I think, if you can, I'm about 88 kilos, and there's no way that I can get my pack under about 10 kilos that's including water and a bit of food. So I try to keep mine under 10 kilos. On Camino Norte, I started with about 12 and a half. So, I was able to reduce it to 10, but for me personally, reducing it to anything much under 10 it's a challenge. Prepping for the walk is always, you can always learn new stuff. So I know, I hope that sort of somewhat answers your question.
While you were talking, another question that came to mind, I mean, talking about purchasing equipment, is it expensive to walk the Camino? Are there ways to do it low budget? Do you need a lot of money for lodging along the way? That's the question that I would ask as I prepare for this trip.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it depends on who you ask. So I've got a very good friend, a German friend called Johannes, and Johannes is an experienced Camino walker, and he's done the Israel National Trail, he's done the Shikoku in Japan, he's done a lot of big Caminos, and he's also he makes it his mission to spend as little money as possible. So he doesn't visit cafes, for example. He buys all his food from supermarkets. I know that recently on his Camino in Japan, to save money on accommodation, he often slept in toilets. And there are people who will make it their goal to keep costs down as much as possible. I sort of fall into the category of what some people call glamino, and that's glamorous Camino. So I do like to do a bit of glaminoing, and by that I mean I love sitting in cafes, and I find that a big part of the experience. I definitely, in fact, I probably got known as the cafe guy on the last Camino, because I do tend to stop a lot. But I love it. I love it. I love sitting down, having a fresh orange juice or a coffee or whatever, and talking to people, and just, I think for me that's a big part of the Camino experience. For other people, again, going back to Johannes, for every cafe I went to, he went to a church and basically did a bit of sort of mindfulness meditation for 20 minutes or whatever. And I think that's also another great way. And so it's statistically written that with Camino Frances, for example, the amount of money you should spend for 1 month is, if you keep costs down to sort of a Johannes standard, it's around 1,000 euros for a month. That's including all food, accommodation, and whatever, other whatever it is, fruit and so on and so forth. I know that the Camino Frances cost me around 2,500, but that's also because I chose to sleep in 1-star hotels sometimes, so that I actually had a whole room to myself, which for me was very important, because I'm not someone who likes to sleep every single night with 10, 20, 30, 50 people in a room. But on Camino Norte, equally so. Alan and I, well, it's actually that is one of the benefits with traveling with somebody else, is that, the costs come down if you want to do a bit of glaminoing, because if you want to get a hotel, it's always a bit cheaper, for example. But on Camino Norte, I think again it's a 5-week walk, 4 if you don't take any rest days, which again I don't really see the sense of, because I think part of a Camino is that you do actually arrive in a town and you do go and see whatever, a bit of the culture there, or a museum or a gallery, or hang out with a friend for half a day or whatever. 5 weeks including rest days, Camino Norte, and cost wise, I don't know, at least 2,000 euros. But not everybody has to spend that. Plenty of people could do that for 1.5, or even 1,000 if they're very frugal. So yeah, and I'm just about to go on another Camino, which is the Camino Via de la Plata, which starts in Seville and goes through the trail is all the way through the middle of Spain up to Santiago, and that's going to be an even longer walk over 6 weeks. And I've sort of made it my goal on this walk to try to do a little bit more money saving, not because I need to save the money as such, but just because I want to try to experience a little bit more of the grassroots elements of a Camino. So there will definitely be a few less cafes, shall we say, and a few more supermarket shops, and probably not as many hotel sleepovers. So I can't promise it won't be a bit of glaminoing, but it'll be a good portion of pure Caminoing.
Well, it's good to hear that there are lots of different ways of doing this, and that also, people with limited means can also do these walks. So it's great that you summed that up for us.
Absolutely.
Hamish, I have another question. I know you're a professional photographer. How do you approach photography when you do these walks? Is it a break for you from photography? I mean, I know we're narrating here over a slideshow, and you've got some great images here on your slideshow, but talk about that, please. Photography, is it a professional thing, more of a free time thing here on the Camino?
Sure. Actually, this is probably a good opportunity for me to add that all of the images that you see throughout the slideshow were all taken on from my phone. It's an aging phone, but I originally bought it 3 or 4 years ago because of the quality of the camera. It's a Sony Xperia Z5, it's the phone was used in one of the James Bond films, which is not why I bought it, but because it's quite an indestructible phone, and because I am a freelance photographer, and I'm often running around and traveling and using a tripod all the time, which means there's a lot of sort of like bending down and setting the tripod up, and I drop my phone quite a bit. So I'd bought this phone for its durability and its camera, and the camera served me really well. Getting more to your question, photography. Having had a fine arts background, and that having then become my professional trade as a professional freelance photographer, has given me the opportunity to work and travel all over the world, which has been fantastic. But one of the downsides has always been, carting around heavy equipment, and this endless issue of weight and equipment, and getting it through hand luggage in airports, and just the weight it's taxing on the body. I mean, I've definitely got not RSI as such, but I've definitely got sort of strain injuries in my fingers and my wrists and my shoulders from years and years and years of having to deal with this equipment. And look, that's just part and parcel of the job. And fortunately today cameras are getting lighter and the technology is changing. And in fact, we're entering a new era of photography where we're now seeing mirrorless cameras, which are slowly overtaking the digital SLRs. And those cameras are fantastic. They're a lot lighter, and there's a lot of other advantages which I won't go into now. But with regards to to photography in the Camino, one thing I found that even surprised me was that I on all of the Caminos, I never wanted to take any of my camera equipment. I sort of wanted to get away from all of that sort of heavy gear. And again, having bought that phone with the decent camera in it for such a journey. I guess what I've found on all of these Caminos is I still very much do take the passion of photography with me, because I found myself stopping all the time to take photos. I mean, I still took literally thousands of photos on every single Camino. So yeah, the appreciation of visual life, or just sort of looking at life through the lens, it definitely stays with me on all of the Caminos. I definitely, and also one of my passions of photography is street photography. And so, walking on a Camino in a sense is kind of like one very big, long street photography adventure. So yeah, I mean, it's so where the camera can be sometimes a little bit limiting is just, you're not able to sort of, sometimes I sort of set up my little camera and I go, I wish I had my 24mm lens, or I wish I'd had my 70 to 200 or whatever. So, you don't have that luxury of different lens angles, but I still very much enjoy using the camera, and have enjoyed using it on the Caminos, and I'll be taking it again on the next Camino.